I want to welcome Lou Kerner, my friend. We've known each other for about 20 years. Lou, I'm going to put your introduction in all the show notes and all the wonderful career you've had. But what I'd like to start with by saying is welcome to the show, Bold Conscious Connections. And let's begin by telling our viewers not what Lou does, but who Lou really is. And how do you like to introduce yourself as to who you are?
Sure. So I say right now, what I've been passionate about for the last 6 years is community. When I saw the crypto light on June 29th, 2017, what I saw was for the first time in history, we have a tool set to solve for the community instead of the man in the middle who generally solves for himself. And it was my belief at that time and still today that that's the biggest, has the potential to be the biggest thing to happen in human history.
Well, you said that very fast. I know from knowing you what you define community as. I know you say a community is an ecosystem where when it works, everyone gets more out of it than they put in. In relation to crypto, just say that again so that people get what you're talking about.
Sure. So during from 2003 to 2006, I ran the world's largest social network called Bull. So we peaked to more than 20 million kids. I was the first person called Zuckerberg and offered to buy Facebook a month after he launched. And weirdly, been thinking about community for 20 years. And it was while running Bolt and running that community that I came to the belief that a community is an ecosystem. When it works, everyone is able to get more out of it than they give. And you can think about that both at a micro level and a macro level. At the micro level, a community is two people, right? And if we've all been in relationships where 1 + 1 can equal 100.
So in the context of crypto, so what the crypto light as you describe it that you saw in June of 2017, what exactly was the epiphany, if you will?
Again, the epiphany was that we now had a tool set, right? I mean, the problem, in my view, with community work and even kibbutzes in Israel is the free rider problem, and that you can have a set of rules, but the rules are very hard to enforce in a fair way, and we all know that all these experiments end up as failures. But now via coding, we can actually have a way of enforcing those rules, and we also have a way of rewarding people for their behaviors in a way where, again, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, can equal, thousands.
Wow. So, a lot of the world and hopefully my community and your community, are a little bit more aware of what crypto is. And a lot of people think that's just crazy. People are nuts to be buying or selling anything related to crypto. Shed some light in terms of, I kind of understand the consciousness aspect of all of this because that's where I saw the crypto light maybe a little bit earlier, but it's not about just trading and investment. And so how do people apply it to themselves?
Sure. Well, it's obviously one of the weird things about crypto is its complexity. And, if you think about it, I don't know how the cellular phone works. I really don't have any idea. It's really complex. And I don't really even know how the internet works, right? And the internet was around for a long time before, Mark Andreessen invented the browser and made it very easy to use. And so I still think we're at that pre-Mark Andreessen place in crypto where it's very complex to use and to understand. And obviously, in order for it to be a mainstream thing, we've got to abstract away all that complexity, just like we did with the mobile phone, just like we did for the internet. And so I don't explain Bitcoin to people or crypto to people, or at least what it means to me. But what I help them appreciate is more try to give them an incentive to learn, because it takes a little bit of time. It's not rocket science. It could take a few weeks to a few months of an hour to a day of learning, reading. And the weird thing too is, in my view, it's infinite. So everybody sees something different when they see it. But for me, when people ask me, what is Bitcoin, what is crypto, I say, for me, I really feel like I grew up in a culture of greed. And I was taught the more I took for myself, the better. And I got to tell you, made a lot of sense, because I like taking stuff and I was good, I like stuff and I was good at taking it. But it turns out that there are other cultures of giving, cultures of community. That's the culture that I want to be a part of. And that's the communities that I am a part of in the crypto communities that I'm with.
And, I'm certainly privy to the fact that, you started CryptoOracle, the collective, but also Crypto Mondays. So, well, again, for those listening, Lou's already a well-known influencer. You can read more about it. But he's been a crypto thought leader since 2013, where Wall Street called him Wall Street's Bitcoin expert back then.
Quoted me as Wall Street's Bitcoin expert in December 2013.
Right. And so I know that I was part of the Crypto Mondays as well. And it's now in 50 cities around the world, not the US. So Lou, you've been actually a gifted guy. You're an analyst, Wall Street analyst back in the day, Goldman, and you went to Stanford, UCLA. You have a very colorful and very, engaging background. And clearly you're a lifelong learner. So in part of what I do here is, for me, it's all about leadership and mindset mastery, which comes from within. It's not outside, because if it's lifelong learning, you better want to learn, whether it's crypto or something else. You don't need to know the intricacies, but you understand how it works. Let's tie this into some kind of the fact that every learning in our lives comes from some kind of trauma, turning points, challenges, the transitions that happen. So can you talk a little bit about the obstacles, challenges that you might have overcome and what you learned from it?
Two things happened in the 6 months prior to when I saw the crypto light in June of 2017. But definitely the biggest one was that my wife sued me for divorce. And I was not unhappy about my wife suing me for about my wife wanting to divorce me. I was aware that we had an unhappy marriage. But the fact that she wanted to sue me and involve lawyers and spent a lot of money and suck up a lot of time was quite distressing. And, with a common practice among smart women whose, husbands have made a buck is they wait until the week before, a few days before you file your taxes and pay your taxes, because that's when you have a big lump sum of money in your bank account. And then they tie up all your assets. So you can't even pay your taxes. And very distressing. And I didn't realize after working for 30 plus years and having a pretty, successful career that one day I could wake up and although I didn't do anything wrong, the government could seize all my assets. And I think when that happens to people, I assume a lot of people do what I do, which is go, oh my God, I did not know that was a thing. What can I do so that doesn't happen again? And pretty quickly you find your way to crypto.
Well, that's pretty fast, the transition. I'm just saying in terms of the obstacles you overcame, that was clearly a challenge that caused a turning point.
Sure.
Relate that to crypto. I'm sort of trying to find that bridge.
Oh, well, just that, if you self-custody your money, everything is on the blockchain. So if the government wants to, they can see that you've made money, right? They can see the money was, the value was transferred from wallet A to wallet B. That's how they got Ross Ulbricht from Silk Road. But the difference is the government can't as easily attach it as they can real estate, money in a bank account, stocks. That's very easy for the government to take.
So are you suggesting crypto is the way of the future for everything, a lot of things in life?
Yeah, this is a new technology. I think it's going to be as impactful as the internet, and to the degree that and impactful as electricity and as impactful as AI, right? Every company is an electric company and uses electricity. Every company is an internet company and uses the internet. Every company is going to be an AI company and leverage AI. It's just going to be an integral part of everything that we do. And it's, my belief, and it seems obvious to me that we're on an inexorable march to crypto, having that same place. And, there are times when we want a middleman, and, middlemen can certainly be very helpful. But there's a lot of times when we don't want a middleman getting in the middle of every one of our transactions. Why do we need MasterCard to take 3% of everything that we buy, right? That's just adding 3% on to what we're paying. We don't even know it because the retailers don't say we increase the price 3%, but obviously they do because retailers have to make a certain amount of money. If you want to pay 3% more for everything, use your MasterCard. But if you don't want to, you want to save 3% of everything, you'll be able to use crypto. So it's not for hiding. But this is about is getting rid of the man in the middle who extracts value, more often than not, I think dramatically more value than they give. And sometimes they're getting value and detracting value, right? The fact, obviously, we have to wait 3 days for a wire transfer, right? My kids, when they appreciate that, will laugh hysterically and think that's how the world worked, really?
So I assume your kids are pretty savvy and are beginning to, or at least have an idea of what all crypto is and where it's going to go? Is there going to be wider acceptance?
No. I don't think any of my kids deep. I mean, they're 20, 21, 24. And while they've heard me talk about it incessantly, none of them have seen the crypto light. And it's, actually weird that to me that, NFTs, which are just give ownership over people to their digital goods, is a bad word for gamers. And that's fine. That will change over time. If you call it a digital good, that they like.
That's right. just in the garb of whatever it is. But going back to community, Lou, because for me, this Bold Conscious Connections podcast that I started almost a couple of years ago is all about the fact that we are all connected individually in other spiritual realms and, woo-woo right now to be talking about. But the truth is, what is it that we're talking about in terms of consciousness and collective consciousness? I have not seen anything in the world out there, at least in my life of 60 plus years. It's a tool to bind us or actually to connect us in ways that you earn what you want to earn, because I read somewhere that 1,250 individuals out of almost 8 billion people own about 50% of the world's wealth. And in terms of percentage, 0.1, whatever percent that is, that own 90% of the world's wealth. What does that speak to in terms of our current state of level of consciousness in this world?
It's mind-boggling that we decided to create a society where we get that concentration of wealth. To what end? Really amazing thing about community is, if you truly appreciate, and spend your time in functional communities where everybody's able to get more out of it than they put in, then you actually can live in a world of abundance, right? And this world of scarcity is just something that we've created for whatever reason. There's not scarcity in the United States, right? I mean, there's such incredible wealth. We've just decided not to share the wealth and to use it actually to create scarcity.
Absolutely. Beautifully put. I mean, I was looking at numbers, 1950, so let's say give or take 100 years post First World War, maybe 1920, 30. The population of the world was about 1.5 billion, I believe, thereabouts. The total wealth of the world, however measured, was 80 billion. Today, we're 8 billion people, almost 4 or 5 times that number. We have, $180 trillion worth of wealth. So there's no question that there is the more ability to create. There is no scarcity per se, but it just seems to be garnered by a few.
This is how we've decided to set up our society, right? We're not making it better. We're making it worse, right? The Supreme Court just, voted down affirmative action in college. So, we can keep the people who have been kept down and continue to keep them down. The weird thing is, what Trump taught me was that when the North won the Civil War, it wasn't like anybody in the South said, oh, I guess we were wrong. They said one day, bide our time and we'll get to put our boot on their throats. And now as a country, it seems all we do is take turn voting for, somebody so that we can put our boot on the other half's throat. And I don't think we're really a country anymore.
So what gives us hope, Lou?
Is this tool set that we have. We don't have to live by laws that 350 million people all have to agree to live on in the United States, right? When we started off as separate states. It was only over time that the central government took on, more and more rules for telling us all how we were going to live. And so whether it's in states or I think what you'll see is increasingly people are leaving the United States because there are more freer, fair places to live in the world today. And I never thought I'd be saying that, but that's certainly through the goggles that I'm looking at the world at, the way it appears. The U.S., to me, and it's not me, but Ray Dalio, right? There has this epic chart of the, 400 years of rise and falls of empires. And, according to his data, we peaked in like the early 60s and now we're in a free fall at the same time as China's ascending. And look, this happens to everybody, right? There's nobody stays on top forever. The U.S. had an epic run, and when the Great Britain was in decline, right, they said, okay, we're in decline. Let's hook our star to the U.S.'s wagon. They're the ascending power. We're unable to do that. We're so dysfunctional that what we're trying to do is brainwash our population that China is the enemy, right? China should be our biggest worry, and it's really crazy how that's been adopted by all of the politicians, all of the media. And let's see if we can kill China. In fact, they're just the ascending power. And I think we'd be much better off figuring out ways, not that China is, the government's, is nice to its people. Obviously not. They're a repressive, authoritative government. It certainly feels like that's what our government is here in the U.S. as well.
So this is just one of the, as you said, tool sets out there. Are there others that help us to become more conscious of who we are and what's being done to us rather than...
going down the consciousness rabbit hole, my personal journey, started fairly recently. I think you were aware I met a Lama in Davos. earlier this year. And he's really started opening up my mind about consciousness and the connectivity of everything, in the universe.
So, everything I do is called bold and conscious. So tell me, I know we're all trying to discover ourselves, but what does consciousness mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm still going down that rabbit hole. I'm reading an amazing book now called The Righteous Mind that basically helps you appreciate that most of our deeply held beliefs we came to with very little thought, and we spend our whole lives trying to defend them, not having an open mind to can they be wrong, but how do we defend them? We're greatly influenced in our morals by, the social settings that we find ourselves in. We're really compelled to try, we're social animals, so we try and fit in socially, and it's much more important to the vast majority of us be seen as morally correct than actually feel and be morally correct.
I'm going to get that book too, but because I read all the time and I got my own book and talk about all this. So in my book, we talk about the consciousness level in three ways. One is your own internal mindset. That's a victim mindset, which is life is happening to me. Number 2 level is life is happening by me, meaning I'm in charge and I rule the world. I can do anything and make anything happen for me. And then the third is life is happening for you or through you, as Tony Robbins says. It's nice to be very clear. Oh, it's life is happening through me. So yeah, you're nothing. You're just simply an instrument of consciousness or not, because you're living your life based on the 5 senses and not being aware of who you really are. All these things happen too at the same time to us. Sometimes we feel like we're a victim. Somebody cuts us off in traffic, like, what a jerk. And then sometimes you're in charge and sometimes you're not. So any of these elements sort of appeal to you?
Sure. I think that's a very useful construct. For me, I guess I strive to be a stoic, believe that there are things in the world that we can impact and that we should work and impact that. And most of the things in the world we can't impact. And so we should just, accept them. It's kind of like gravity, right? You can be mad at gravity, but that's not really going to have an impact on gravity. And it'd be great if gravity wasn't around, but gravity is here. So we've got to deal with it. And, I think that's what Stoicism is, appreciating what you can change and changing what you can and accepting what you can't.
So the other word is bold. Lou, what does it mean? In our thesis, I talk about bold being you're ambitious, you're decisive, you're convinced about something. Then there are the 2 H's. One is that you're humble. And then lastly, you're heart-centered. So we made up a definition of bold in our book. What does bold mean to you when I say bold?
Bold's a great word. Yeah, I think to some degree it means there are a lot of smart people in the world. And when I became an analyst, the first lesson I learned was that markets are really efficient. Who knew? That said, now I feel that once in a while I'm able to see things that other people can't for whatever reason or don't. Part of being bold is, I think, really believing in yourself and in what you see. Not only believing in it, but acting on it. Sometimes we see things, but we don't have the ability, courage to act on it. And, so I think, being bold is believing in yourself and acting on it. And I think one of the things that our society, I think, puts too much of a burden on people for failure, shouldn't be seen as such a bad thing, right? We should be trying things a lot more. I think most people should be bolder.
Awesome. Failure is the way to do anything that's meaningful and of learning in life, right? Can you tie society to community in your definition of community, the way you described it earlier?
Well, sure. 10 thoughts on community. And, one of my thoughts is that a community can scale, highly correlated to what I call value delta. So in other words, a community manufactures something for community members at a cost of X. Community members get it and they value it at Y. And the difference between X and Y, the bigger the difference is, the bigger the community can become. If you think about it, the biggest communities in the world today are actually the things with the biggest value deltas. And we have a collective name for those things. We call those things religions. And that's why they've scaled to billions of people and lasted thousands of years, because they have massive, massive, massive value delta.
So Lou, how do you tie all of this, whether it's consciousness and the new light that you're living in the middle of, you see the new tool set, how do you tie that into life's leadership?
So my macro lessons, so like with Crypto Mondays, the meetup that I started in New York in January of 2018 now, in 51 active chapters around the world. And the business model for that is simply the more you do for the community, the more the community takes it, multiplies it, and gives it back. If you're always focused on the different your communities are in, on how can you give more to the community, I think that's really how I try and focus my mind share. And one of the interesting things, if you think about back to my definition too about community, that everyone gets more out of it than they give. If you think about the genesis of any community, and again, the easiest to think about a two-person community, right? That at the genesis of a two-person community, one person has to be the first person to give. And so, I'm always comfortable being the first person to give. It doesn't have to be a lot, but the rewards from that, from when it works and you're able to build that community so astronomical, then even if you give to lots of people and none of them give back, you can still come out a massive, massive winner.
That is so powerful. I mean, I'm just imagining that, because that's really the power of community. I mean, I always sort of bristled at the word community 5-7 years ago, and now I understand much more the meaning of it, and I learned from you. So thank you.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, I'm learning every day. I think we're really at the very beginning of this community journey in terms of really, optimizing it for human coordination.
I mean, people, particularly in the US, they say we want to connect, with the post-pandemic. Oh my God, I really want to meet people, like-minded people, community. But nobody actually does it or pays for it. Have you noticed that?
There are all kinds of different communities. For myself, one place where I learned a lot about community was I was a longtime shareholder of MeetUp, before I started actually running meetups. And I think meetups are amazing communities where people get together and share their passions. If you think about the greatest decentralized community, I think, arguably is AA, right? And look at the massive positive impact AA has had on people's lives.
So what would be one or two of your greatest leadership lessons that you've learned in your life thus far? And you got a long way to go.
I think the first big leadership lesson I had, I was running my first startup, .tv. We had acquired the rights to the top-level domain .tv from the island nation of Tuvalu. And it was about when we reached like 100 employees, I came to the belief that all of my employees, everybody, wanted the same thing, and they wanted it all the time. And I could say it in just one word. That word is more. I think it's human nature to want more. That's how we're wired. As a manager and a leader, and you want to reward people, and the challenge is, how do you keep on giving them more? And so that's something that I've struggled with since. Something that plays very well to community, right? Because community is all about how do you continue to give them more and more and more. That's really what community does, is try and give its members more and more utility.
So in terms of the lesson, if I was listening to this, what would that be to walk away? That I know that it's endemic to me to want more.
If you want to keep people engaged, you have to figure out how to continually give them more and more and more.
I see. So it's not just material, it's growth. Sounds like that's what you're saying.
It's everybody's different. A lot of people obviously want more money. Lots of people, surprisingly, my favorite people were the ones who wanted more responsibility. I love them.
Yes.
Lots of people wanted more time off, right? Time off is very important to a lot of people. Right. So, and everybody, has a different set of things that they prioritize in a different way. But what they all shared is whenever you gave it to them, they were generally happy for a nanosecond, and then they wanted more again. And again, I don't think that I'm any different.
So it depends on what motivates people, and in terms of whatever it is that they're one more of, what I'm hearing.
Yes.
I don't know, at least in my lifetime, I've had a few cycles, economic cycles or other cycles. I'm sure you have as well. By all counts, this particular one, the last 2 or 3 years of a very different, let's call it whatever the pandemic is and was and continues to have, some way that we're now living in fear. What advice would you give to someone who's listening to us, who's a leader, but yet is navigating some real unusual uncertainties that they've never faced before?
Look, I think it's hard for everybody. I think part of the success that I've had is, again, trying to be a stoic, recognize that, to some degree, life is a Ferris wheel, right? And you're only on top for so long, and then life, has a way of putting you at the bottom. But if you hang out long enough, you can, be back on top again. And I'm a huge lover of the poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling. And it's a whole lot of lines there. If you can do all these things right, if you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat both imposters just the same. My the show favorite told you the joke. That's my favorite insight into humanity. Is about the mother with twin 12-year-old sons. One's always happy and one's always sad. She brings them to a doctor to understand the difference, like what's going on. And the doctor puts them each in a separate room, each in a big box, and he fills the box full of horse shit for 5 minutes. And he goes to the one who's always sad after 5 minutes, and he's whining, "Oh my God, get me out. It's the worst day of my life." And he goes to the one who's always happy. And he's like, oh my God, so happy, so happy. They struggle to calm him down. Finally, after a few minutes, they're able to calm him down and ask, what are you so happy about? He says, oh my God. He says, I love horses. And I know with all this horse shit here, there's got to be a horse somewhere nearby. To some degree, life is a box of horse shit, right? We all deal with disappointment. We all deal with death. And, you can spend your time focused on that, or you can spend your time looking for the horse.
Awesome. So, for someone who's touching or going down the rabbit hole of consciousness, you're pretty conscious, my friend. You are. In the context of learning and, creating and co-creating our own process of learning, what discoveries might you have about yourself or otherwise in this conversation in the past 45 minutes or so?
The whole mindfulness, I don't think I really integrate it into, kind of my day to day, minute to minute, to the degree that I do. So definitely this conversation, raised my kind of awareness of that, thinking about just integrating it more. Because, what I found is, the more mindful I am generally, the happier I am. And I think probably the better I perform.
Beautiful. One question I normally ask my guests, and I didn't ask you, is what are your practices that you have to raise or be more conscious? Maybe just one practice a day or two that make you become more centered and aware.
I would probably say, the thing that I do that, helps me become, more mindful is microdose.
Ooh, all right. So, but people who don't know what that is, I didn't know anything about that 6 months ago, but what does that mean?
For me, it's psilocybin. It's actually legal now or been decriminalized in various jurisdictions, and I think will continue to be. I think in the early days of research, to deeply understand it, but I certainly feel that I'm able to be more present and just, more aware for extended periods of time, as opposed to, I think for much shorter periods of time outside of that.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave that thought as is in the air. Appreciate you being here, Lou. I really feel like this was very meaningful, and for those listening to this conversation, very interesting. Combines some of the worldly things that are going on and how they connect to community and who we are. I think that's really, really unique. I appreciate that. Appreciate you being here.
Okay, sure. Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for what you're doing and the value you're bringing to your community.
Thank you.